There's a lot of good games out there, and a lot of them could easily be categorized as the best ever. But you know which one stands out enough to be a top contender for that title? Halo. There are few series that can truly hold a candle to Halo's legacy, and I'm just gonna say it right now. The games in the original Halo Trilogy are modern classics. I love Halo so much. So much so that I'm just gonna outline what makes the original trilogy so incredible. This is why I think Halo could possibly be the best game ever.
Killtrocity.
Alright, just imagine. It's the early 2000s, you just got home from school for the afternoon, you throw down your backpack, ditch the portable CD player, probably complete with Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory if you were high school nu metal trash like I was, maybe grab a soda or something and plop yourself down in front of your Xbox, which to you is still the shiny and quite literally very green new kid on the block. You boot it up and you're greeted by something reminiscent of a Gregorian choir. That unforgettable hymn paired with tribal drum beats and classical orchestra that sounds nothing like what someone would expect to hear when they arrive at the main menu screen of a video game, even in the era of PlayStation 2 and DVD media. Then, you're transported to another world, and you find yourself in the armored boots of the hero, everyone's favorite spacefaring badass just waiting to be awoken when he's needed, the Master Chief. If you've ever played Halo Combat Evolved, you probably have pretty vivid memories of the first time you took the role of the Master Chief. I mean, who couldn't? Halo was mind-blowingly awesome in 2001. There was nothing quite like it at the time, and it innovated on so many different mechanics in the FPS genre. To this day, we're still experiencing the effects of Halo's contributions to gaming. But before we jump in, let's talk a little bit about the game pre-launch. We all know Halo as Xbox's flagship franchise, but it wasn't always destined to be Microsoft's big series. In fact, almost exactly 20 years ago, in July 1999, Halo Combat Evolved was revealed for the first time not on Microsoft's stage, but Apple's. Yeah, that's right, Steve Jobs himself delivered the presentation that introduced Halo to the world with a brief trailer. In fact, it was actually set to launch on Windows and Mac simultaneously. Can you imagine a world where Halo wouldn't release on the Xbox? Needless to say, our story here would probably be a little different. And there were definitely a few more shifts during development as well, most notably the seismic one from a third-person action game to the genre-defining first-person shooter we all know and love. But Halo Combat Evolved finally released alongside the original Xbox on November 15th, 2001. And much like the console itself, it was huge. It's still one of the most influential games to ever exist, and one reason for that is how the game actually played. Now, first-person shooters on home consoles weren't unheard of back in the day. I mean, we had games like one of my all-time favorites, Goldeneye 007 on the Nintendo 64. Problem is, they didn't always have the most intuitive gameplay. Just go back and play Goldeneye without those rose-tinted goggles. Even if you played that game for weekends at a time in its heyday and then went back to play it in a post-Halo landscape, you'll definitely see what I mean. Probably the hard way. Probably in the temple with proximity mines. And 64C buttons do not an analog joystick make. Now, while the original Xbox controller, affectionately known as the Duke, isn't the most practical thing ever, although Lord knows I actually want the recent Windows 10 and Xbox One reissue for my own trips down memory lane, somehow Bungie made it work. Remember how we were just talking about GoldenEye and how that was the de facto for the time, but still lacking that extra something? Well, while other dual-stick shooters had started popping up at the time, thanks to a few slick innovations, Halo definitively proved that first-person shooters weren't just something you played on a PC, even pioneering a controller layout that many other games emulate to this very day. That's right. Thanks to Halo, you could have a blast playing a shooter with a controller too. The basic mechanics were like this. Right trigger fires your gun, left trigger throws a grenade, you switch weapons with Y, and you reload with X, melee with B, jump with A, click the right thumbstick to zoom, and so on. And that's even before we got the shoulder buttons from the 360 controller. Now that doesn't sound extraordinary by today's standards, but it was really innovative for its time. Controller aside, plenty of mechanics from Halo remain shooter staples to this day. Take a classic game like Doom. You had health packs and no recharging shields, or even regenerating health. In a modern game like Call of Duty, you just have regenerating health and no shields. Halo Combat Evolved had regenerating shields in addition to health packs, so it was kind of like a bridge between these generations of shooters. Like a true Spartan, you could kill Covenant and Flood without worrying too much for your health, unless you're on the brutal legendary difficulty, of course. Because of this health mechanic, the player is almost always engaged, and there's very few pauses in the action. Oh, and speaking of action, can we just ignore the Covenant for a second and talk about how absolutely terrifying the Flood were at the time? I'm telling you, I'll never forget the first time I saw one of those bulbous, disgusting masses hobbling towards me. Once it fell over and exploded and all of those creepy, cabbage-looking aliens popped out, I was basically doing my best impression of Bill Paxton.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
And the sounds they make, ugh, I will not lie, those Flood sounds still keep me up at night.
Listen. What is that?
Oh my god, don't even get me started on Captain Keyes. Like, you remember when you have to go rescue him only to see the horrible proto-Gravemind he's become? Ugh, god, my skin's still crawling, and that was before the Master Chief Collection remaster. It's f***ing nightmare fuel, dude. Actually, this is another area where Halo Combat Evolved really excels. The enemy design was so varied and original. Each enemy has different attack patterns and ways to deal with them. Like the Flood, they're slow but come in huge masses. They soak up bullets easily, so you need to use something like a shotgun, grenades, or the rocket launcher. For the Covenant, grunts are just pesky little aliens to show how badass and feared the Master Chief is. And the Hunters, well, they're just about as fearsome as the Flood, but for a slightly different reason. The armor around these giant wormy things shrugs off most weapons, so you either have to bait their charge and shoot their soft exposed body from behind in a more strategic fashion, or just take the easy way out and take a rocket launcher to them. It was just so cool back then, and again, I know it doesn't sound like a big deal now, but it kinda set the standard for future shooters in terms of enemy balanced and nuanced in-world real-time storytelling. Halo 1 also featured vehicular combat, and it was good! It controlled so well and didn't feel tacked on, which was already an impressive feat given the other innovations we just discussed. I also defer back to controlling the tank in the street level in Goldeneye's campaign. Anyway, with its mounted turret, the Warthog provided hours of entertainment on Blood Gulch. You felt an incredible sense of speed on the Ghost, zooming around and crushing Covenant, or your friends if they were in your path in multiplayer. Come on, you know you couldn't resist doing that either. Now, I could gush about Halo Combat Evolved all day. Really, I could. But just bringing up the multiplayer is getting me kind of hyped about Halo 2. So let's move on. Halo 2 improved on the Combat Evolved formula. Still had a badass campaign and awesome weapons, as well as the sequel requisites like more weapons, new vehicles, including, hey, look at that, a tank, and overall improved gameplay mechanics. Still, Halo 2's biggest claim to fame is undeniably the multiplayer. While Xbox Live deployed a year into the system's lifespan, it really hit its stride by the time Halo 2 dropped another 2 years later in November 2004. Already an incredible achievement back in the day, Xbox Live proved that no longer were PCs the king of online play. Xbox Live had Halo 2, and that meant Xbox Live was the definitive way to play Halo 2 multiplayer. Even when playing locally, Halo 2's greatest strength was probably its map design. Lockout, Ascension, Warlock, Zanzibar. If you're a Halo fan, these words carry a boatload of memories behind them. Bungie took verticality and competitive gameplay to the next level. Walking through Lockout's winding paths and large open courtyard would leave any survivor with a 1,000-yard stare. Ascension's Sniper Tower and that vexing Banshee spawn probably made you break your controller in rage at some point. And to play all of these maps online against other people from all around the world, that was effectively unheard of outside the PC realm up to that point. Before Halo 2, you were just playing Halo with whoever happened to be on your couch or in your dorm or wherever you hunkered down to play it with others. Eventually, you'd learn your friends' quirks, tricks, and playstyles. Like that one friend who always goes for the Banshee, so you just wait to snipe them. Another always camps the rocket launcher spawn, but online, you never knew who you were playing against. So every match was exhilarating and fun, even when they were insulting your mother and teabagging you after you died. A couple new mechanics made Halo 2 and its multiplayer that much more exciting. First and foremost, dual wielding. If you ever wanted to know what it felt like to be an 80s action movie star before Super Hot was a thing, just pick up two needlers. And yes, before you mention it, Goldeneye and Perfect Dark had this too, but let's be honest, nothing is more satisfying than shooting exploding glowy spikes into some jerk that's been kicking your ass all match. And he was probably also using the noob combo, you know, the source of many rage moments. Yeah, I know, you remember charging up the plasma pistol, shooting it at some poor sap, and then quickly switching to the battle rifle, which was an instant kill, and broken as hell. And it was hilarious, at least if you were the one doing it. Me, I was more of an energy sword guy in Halo 2, but that's neither here nor there. Oh, and then there's super bouncing. If you played Halo 2 back in the day, then you already know what I'm talking about. It's a legendary gaming exploit and one everyone really should know about. You ever want to jump all the way to the top of that giant tower in Ascension? Well, you just get that crouching glitch, find a seam in the polygons, and whoosh, away you go. Bring a sniper rifle with you, and you were basically unstoppable. Glitch exploitation at its finest. Last but not least, the campaign had its fair share of awesome moments. We all know the Chief is a badass, but one of his most amazing feats was that one time he gives the Covenant back their bomb. Yeah, the dude literally opens the airlock, gets sucked out into space with this huge spiky bomb, drops it on a huge alien ship, and then lands on a friendly Pelican like it was just a casual afternoon stroll. Oh, and a bonus fact, if you ever saw the original teaser trailer for the game in 2002, that sequence was basically integrated almost shot for shot into the game's story and made better with the bomb bit just because of how cool it was, even after they cut an entire level. Oh, and the musical piece for that, The Last Spartan, easily one of my personal favorite motifs that I've ever heard, and that's just beyond game soundtracks. Oh, and my mind was blown when I played the Arbiter for the first time. Okay, imagine you spend Halo 1 killing scores of Covenant, and suddenly you're thrust into the shoes of an elite, someone Master Chief normally wouldn't hesitate to kill? Bungie were masters of subverting expectations, and not in that Metal Gear Solid 2 Raiden way. And again, I know, I love me some Metal Gear, but don't tell me you weren't pissed about that bait and switch if you were playing it for the first time back in 2001. Throw in some breathtaking action and amazing set pieces like driving the aforementioned tank through New Mombasa, followed by the incredible sequence with the Scarab and the badassery you had to pull off as the Chief to stop it, and you've got the gold standard for a shooter campaign. And yes, it may have had a few issues, and it was definitely unbalanced at times, but you really can't replicate the amazing experience of playing Halo 2 back in the day. So, how would its follow-up do? Well, given how much I spent on this thing, I'd say pretty good. 3 years after the launch of Halo 2, the hype for the last entry in the original trilogy was through the roof. This was, of course, thanks to two things. 1, Halo was awesome. Duh. 2, Halo 3 had a ridiculous ad campaign. You think Fortnite's ad game was good? Oh, eat your heart out, John Wick. Oh my god, we need Keanu Reeves in Halo. Whoa. Halo 3's marketing went all out. Fun fact, before working on the movie District 9, its director Neil Blomkamp directed a group of Halo shorts collectively called Landfall. Halo fans around the world were hyped as all hell for these videos. A bunch of ODST, have a firefight with brutes, explosions everywhere, that warthog scene. Oh, and the part where the dude throws a freaking spike grenade at a Banshee and it explodes. It was a Halo fan's dream and a glimpse at what a live-action Halo could look like well before Forward Unto Dawn happened. The Believe campaign was another game changer. There was this epic diorama that depicted the Second Battle of Mombasa between the UNSC and Covenant forces. It was incredibly detailed, and people were able to explore it on the web, relishing in all of its gory details. Another part of the Believe campaign were these fake documentary clips of UNSC veterans. They talked about their experiences during the war, and one of these veterans even had this nasty scar on the side of his face from plasma. The meticulous planning and commitment to realism was, well, unreal. On release, Halo 3 would set world records and become a world phenomenon yet again. And the game itself was, again, the stuff of legend. It concluded this amazing trilogy set in a sci-fi world like nothing else. It was an amalgamation of all the best parts of Halo 1 and 2. And the way Halo 3 capped the series off was nothing short of brilliant. See, we kind of glossed over this till now, but the ending to Halo 1 was a white-knuckle, adrenaline-fueled race to the finish, escaping the destruction of the Pillar of Autumn on your Warthog, just hoping you'd make it in time. Halo 3 ends in a similar way, yet no one would dare say it felt like a cop-out or it was unoriginal. That moment in Combat Evolved was very epic, but Halo 3, it cranks that up. The Halo facility is literally falling apart as you drive your Warthog across a crumbling landscape and past hordes of Flood, and eventually you make that daring jump to the ship, to freedom. That one last pump of adrenaline as you cross the metaphorical and literal finish line? Perfect way to end the trilogy. So yes, The campaign was hype, and yes, the multiplayer was still incredible, but Forge mode truly revolutionized Halo's multiplayer. Future Halo games would continue to improve this, but at the time, this tool gave console players the power to craft maps like a PC modder. Zooming around as a Forerunner monitor and crafting your own arenas for you and your pals to play on provided countless hours of entertainment. Bungie was happy to accommodate with maps like the Zombie House and fan-created modes like Griffball, thanks to the still ongoing series Red vs. Blue. Forge mode let players have the most stupid fun we could ever have, and there's a reason that stuck around for so long. I feel like there's a plasma grenade joke in here somewhere. Speaking of sticking around, there's a reason that Halo as a franchise itself has stuck around. It's more than just a game. There's the multimedia element spanning comics, TV shows, and even an animated film anthology. Seriously, Toei's contribution to Halo Legends that focuses on Spartan 1337 is the most goofy-ass Dragon Ball nonsense, and it is great! Go watch it on Netflix once you're done here, please. In fact, as far back as a few weeks before the first Halo launched, Bungie and Microsoft released a book called Halo: The Fall of Reach. This was a bold move and a sign of things to come. Halo Combat Evolved had an undeniably strong narrative from the off, so it made sense that they needed to release a fully fledged, several hundred-page novel to go along with the game. And to this day, Halo has dozens of books, brimming with lore that expands the game's already awesome universe. Oh, and remember how we just mentioned Red vs. Blue? Well, the success of that web series, which, remember, started out as a machinima using the first Halo game, is in its own way further testament to the importance of Halo, since the game literally spawned an entire animation studio in the form of Rooster Teeth, who now produce original and world-renowned shows like Ruby and Genlocked. Not bad for a bunch of dudes who started out by getting tanked and screaming about whether or not the warthog looks more like a puma. There's also that Showtime series that will hopefully come out soon, and hell, we've even had Halo 3 Mountain Dew. And for the record, it's the best flavor they've ever had, and that's a hill that the writer of this script will proudly die on. Please don't kill him, he still needs to play Halo Infinite and live long enough to see a Hollywood-produced Halo film. Oh, and speaking of all things cinematic, the music. The music! Like I mentioned at the start, and again when talking about Halo 2, the score by composers Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore is so nuanced, so definitive that it can easily stand shoulder to shoulder with great soundtracks by legendary film composers like John Williams, Alan Silvestri, and Hans Zimmer. We glossed over it talking about the hype train for Halo 3, but the Finish the Fight motif? Even nearly 13 years after first hearing it in the game's trailer, that simple 5-chord piano melody still fills me with a bundle of emotions when I hear it. Just hum the Halo theme and people will probably recognize it as quickly as something like the Raiders March from Indiana Jones or the World 1-1 theme from Super Mario Bros. Honestly, you can't say many games resonate the way Halo does. Since the very first game, it's become a colossal sci-fi property all its own. Its impact now spans entire generations, and given the hype around Halo Infinite, will definitely continue to influence video game culture for years to come. Look, it's not a contest because, hey, all games are pretty awesome. But yeah, Halo is pretty much the best game ever. Alright, so I've been screaming about my favorite Halo memories, but what are some of yours? And if you haven't played a single Halo game, honestly, there's never been a bad time to start, and especially now that the originals are making their way back to PC, it gives even more people access to a trilogy of the best games ever made. My personal favorite is Halo 3 for multiplayer, but I still wax nostalgic for the original Combat Evolved. Oh, that final Warthog sequence, man. I feel that adrenaline rush every time I think about it. Oh, and if you just want to dive into some of Halo's amazing story while you're already clicking through our videos, take a look at our complete Halo timeline. It covers events prior to Halo Reach all the way up to Halo 3. And don't forget to subscribe to the Leaderboard. We're 1 million players and counting. Thanks for making that possible, guys. I'm Mario Bueno. See you next time.